Hey, Joe. How are you?
Finding yourself, sir.
I'm good.
Listen,
Good.
I'm probably more nervous talking to you than anybody else I've done so far, man.
Why?
Because I've read so much about you and everything that you've done. I mean, you're an absolute legend in the industry, man.
I don't know about that, but thanks.
I mean, it's not every day you talk to SEMA Man of the Year or Person of the Year. I mean, that is such an accomplishment.
Well, thank you. And right now you're talking to Seema's Person of the Year from his backyard. So, yeah.
How's things going on that side?
It's good, actually. It's been really positive. We're reopening the office Monday, which is good. And I'm proud of my team. We have not historically ever worked remote, and everybody did a pivot, and it worked really well. Everyone has been working their butts off. So we've been really pretty fortunate that we've had great results. We've been on the gas hard.
Mhm.
Our employees have been really efficient. So we haven't had any loss of productivity. It's been great.
I mean, look, I've been watching you guys, and I've been watching the video stuff that you brought out, the white papers. I've been reading everything, and I mean, you guys have just been all trying to inform the market as much as possible. I mean, that's a great piece. Like I think you got my mail. Like I said, be part of the solution. So moving forward.
Yeah, and by the way, great note. And I'll respond this weekend. You had a lot of questions in there, so I'll get to all of that. But no, that was good. That was a well thought out email. And it's weird, Joe. I sort of expected other outlets, especially sort of the B2B media, to really step up with more information about what's happening out there during this whole thing. And almost the opposite happened. It's really weird. Sort of the traditional B2B media that normally serves the automotive industry has gone almost radio silent. And I thought, well, someone's got to do it. So I guess it'll be us.
I want to find out from you. I mean, I know how things are looking in South Africa. All right,
And tell me what's going on down there.
yeah, we're struggling with our government. I mean, I watched your show yesterday on the help, the funding and stuff that's coming through for small businesses and that type of stuff. They did the same in South Africa, but they hit us with you have to be BE compliant to get funding or get any form of help. And obviously we're not. Our advertisers have not traded for 2 months. All the shops that we deal with. So I mean, you can't tap into them when they're just struggling to actually keep their doors open. A lot of shops don't know what's going to happen when they can, because we're still not going to work. Eh? We are only in phase 4 at the moment. Shops can only start working in phase 3, which they said is actually only at the end of the month. So that's 2 months of no money, no work, nothing coming in.
Right.
So it's grim, and that's why I mean I wanted to talk to you on what we can propose to the guys at the moment going forward, and also what you see how the industry where it is now, and how are all of these things going to change it.
Well, that's a good question, and it's interesting. Well, it's funny. I have an analogy I've been using a little bit. Well, we do the marketing for a couple different automotive museums, and one of them is the Peterson, which is a big car museum in LA. The other one is a smaller car museum up in our county, Ventura County, called the Mullen. And Peter Mullen's pretty well known in the kind of the Concours world. He's a big time French car collector. He has one of the biggest collections of pre-war Bugattis. He has a lot of Voissons and really unusual stuff. A couple Pebble Beach winners, and he has really eclectic taste. And he did an exhibit a couple of years ago called Cars and Carriages. And I'm more of a hot rod guy, and this was going to focus on the Belle Epoque era, so like 1890 to 1920, which is not really my personal taste. So when I heard about the exhibit, I was like, eh. And we started promoting this exhibit, and what fascinated me about this exhibit, about that time frame, so 1890 to 1920, is at the beginning in 1890, so right around the time when Carl Benz was kind of doing his thing, before Henry Ford even had the idea to do the auto cycle that became eventually the Model T. Basically, every city, the big metropolitan cities in the world, London, Paris, to some degree, New York, horse and buggy were the only mode of transportation, and the cities stank, and they had huge amounts of disease. Because if you think about how you have, a couple 100,000 horses walking through the streets of Paris every day, imagine what that looks like.
Yeah.
The waste is disgusting, and people had all sorts of diseases related to it. And there's blacksmiths on every corner making horseshoes and buggy whips and all this other stuff. Well, you fast forward 20 years from 1890 to 1910. That's it, 20 years. And all of a sudden, the major cities all look completely different. Because now you're starting to get motorized automobiles in the urban centers, and you have cars coming in, but society wasn't ready for it yet. Okay. So they had these things called red light laws or red flag laws, where basically, if you went to New York or London or Paris in 1910, there would be a guy walking. So, say some, fairly affluent person, it would have to be basically a rich person to own a
Mm.
car at that point because they didn't have, mass production. The Model T, the assembly line hadn't really gotten tooled up yet.
Yeah.
So, some rich guy goes out and buys a car and it goes 20, 25 miles an hour. Well, the laws in those cities at that time required them to have a servant walking in front of the car waving a red flag because they didn't want the guy in the car to either run over a pedestrian or scare a horse. So now you bought this thing so that you don't have to ride around on a horse, and you're forced to go 4 miles an hour, however fast a person walks who's waving a flag in front of you. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And then you go another 10 years after that to 1920, and the red flag laws are done, and the horses are gone, and there's cars everywhere, and all the waste and rivers of excrement and disease and all the stuff that's related to that whole thing, it's over.
But
So
now
that was
you
a
have
30
smog.
year period. Right. So everything changed. It was a paradigm shift. And I think what we were experiencing before COVID was that.
Mm.
I think that there has already been for the last 20 years or so this shift, because I kind of grew up, I'm in my early 40s, and I grew up, at kind of the tail end. My dad was a car guy, his dad was a car guy. I grew up in a hot rod family. I wrote for all the, the hot rod magazines back in the day. And so I was, I think, probably the last of the generation that grew up where to me, a cool performance car was you go buy a Mustang or a Camaro or whatever, and you modify it, you make it cooler and faster, and you lower it, and you put wheels on it. And I did grow up playing very basic video games, but it was like Nintendo. I wasn't introduced to car culture by any kind of media other than maybe magazines. I was introduced to car culture by seeing cool cars and going to car shows with my dad.
Same here.
Now
Yeah.
I have, yeah. So I have employees that are in their 20s that you ask them how they got into cars, and it was on Forza, or it was on, Gran Turismo, or, they saw Gone in 60 Seconds, the Nick Cage movie. And so
That's the
it was
worst
sort of,
one.
yeah, I know it is, right? And yeah, the Halicki one was actually good. But so it's interesting that they're getting into it because of media. And so to me, our whole industry was already kind of going down the path of kind of the horse thing, where you can still own a horse,
Mm.
but you probably don't own a horse so you can ride it to work. You own a horse because you race horses or you show horses or you got a jumper, and it becomes this sort of, it's a hobby, but it's not necessarily a necessity. And the performance car thing, I think cars are always going to exist in one way or another, but it's becoming more of a hobby and less of a, I have this thing I have to drive every day, and I'm also going to
Mm.
mod the hell out of it just because it's all I can do. So, that shift and the media shift has already been happening. I mean, as you noted, I mean, print's getting harder and harder. We produce a print magazine for the Peterson Museum, and the cost of paper keeps going up. I mean, it's getting harder and harder to produce a print magazine,
Yeah.
and we're
That's what killed
competing with,
us. That's what
yeah,
that was the biggest thing that killed us. Is it was the cost of your paper and your cost of distribution.
yeah,
Um,
and that's exactly. And then the newsstand thing, and I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but out here, a conglomerate sort of bought all the newsstands and then went out of business. And when that happened, it really hurt us because if there's nowhere to buy them and it becomes a subscription only model, that's also very challenging. What COVID is doing, and it's still, I mean, I think we're in the eye of the storm right now, so it's hard to kind of see what's really happening until I think it's over.
Mm.
But what's been sort of fascinating is it is taking all these things that were already happening, and it's just throwing a big jug of nitro on top of it. It's making everything, it's just accelerating everything.
Yeah.
So there was already a shift to digital. Well, now everyone's trapped in their houses with nowhere to go and they're bored. So now the shift to digital is huge. There was already an interest in podcasting and YouTube. It's exploded. Mobile devices, these things. Apple is about the only company I know that has launched a major new product during the pandemic and had it just like they crushed it, the iPhone SE,
Yeah.
because people are like, well, I need a fairly fast phone. I want to do all these different things on my phone, not just maybe go on Instagram, but upload video and shoot video and take pictures and stream content. And that's an easy way to do it. And it's inexpensive. So all this stuff that was sort of already happening is still happening. It's just happening faster.
Oh yeah,
And then
it's shoved down your throat at the moment more than anything
right.
else. Yeah, because
The other thing
it's a flight to what's a live or die situation at the moment. If you're not
Right.
moving digital, you're not putting your company online. You closing your doors. Yeah,
Right. And what's been sort of eye opening for me is there's been this schism where certain companies have really benefited from it, and certain companies have obviously been brutalized by it. If you're in the events business, this is a pretty tough deal. I feel terribly.
and movie
We yeah, same thing. Yeah, exactly. And we do the marketing for about half a dozen major car shows around the country, and that has just been brutal. I mean, those guys have just been. I mean, what do? You can't. If you're either Pebble Beach or the Quail or Good Guys or even like we work with Moto America, which is the North American feeder series to MotoGP. Your entire business model is based on ticket sales. So I mean that's a tough deal. You can stream content all day long. It's pretty hard to recoup that revenue. So on that side of things, it's hard. On the flip side, what's been really interesting is most of our parts manufacturer clients that have either already done the pivot to digital and direct to consumer sales or are doing it right now are flat or in some cases are even up.
Mm.
And to me, I thought like, okay, unemployment's at like, I don't know, it's somewhere in the mid 20%. I mean, it's the highest it's been since the 1930s. And common sense would dictate people aren't buying car parts right now. Nope. Car guys are car guys. And you look at a car guy in his house with his wife for a month, and what is he going to do? He's going into the garage, right?
Hey,
And
that's true.
and that's what's
true.
happening.
Yeah, that reminds me of that joke where they said to the guy, "Would you like to A, stay with your family, or B?" And the guy goes, "B." Yeah, be locked up with your family, or B, and the guy goes, B. Look, I've always said it. If you're a car guy, you're going to build cars. Guys will still have that budget. They will still. I mean, it might mean he's going to eat beans on toast for a few days, but that car's always going to be in the garage and it's going to need to run, and it might extend it by another 3 or 4 months, but they're still going to build. But it's like I said to someone the other day, I said, rodders have been doing this since what, World War II. We've gone through so much in the world, and they are still there. They're not going anywhere. Yeah, car guys will always build cars. Yeah,
you're right.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny. I went by a shop the other day that so out here it's interesting, and it varies kind of state by state and county by county, but they've classified car repair as an essential business. So a lot of the shops that, like the shop I went by, they do, yeah, and which is good. But it's so funny because the shop I went by to visit, because they're not too far from me, and I just wanted to kind of stop in and see what they were doing. They've got like 6 SEMA builds going on right now with Roadster shop chassis and like, you know, they got this crazy Bronco with one of those Mercury Racing overhead cam blown like 1,000 horse V8s in it. I mean, these are crazy SEMA builds, and they're like an essential business because they're like, yeah, we're doing repair, and I'm like,
to what?
Yeah, you're doing like long travel suspension on a Raptor. I'm not sure that counts, but cool. But just going in there and shooting the breeze and talking to a bunch of car guys, and I'm gonna be honest, I broke the law, and none of us were wearing masks. We're just shooting the shit, having a good time, and it felt so good. It was just like, you know what? Like, life is normal for a couple of minutes, and I think a lot of car guys miss that, and I think that's why, at least for now, the parts side of the business is still doing pretty good, but it's become a lot of DIY stuff. So I'm not sure how many people are building motors right now, but a lot of people are doing kind of simple things. They're doing bolt-ons. They're,
Mm.
putting on parts and accessories. I know, like on the Jeep side of things, our client Quadratech, that's one of the bigger retailers in the Jeeps world. They're selling a lot of like lifting and leveling kits, a lot of retractable running boards, trail armor, body armor, so winches, the kind of stuff that a guy who's maybe not a super hardcore fabricator can still do at home in his garage with hand tools. So that to me has been sort of a silver lining of this whole thing.
Yeah, that's what's killing us. I mean, we few issues. One, um, we can't buy parts at all. They only opened like car part stores a week ago. We cannot, no online buying, nothing. If it wasn't food or nappies and stuff, you could not purchase anything. So you couldn't even go buy something so you could fix. I mean, I at one stage started running out of screws for fixing things around my house. I was pulling screws out of things to put them into other places, you know, because I just
So
couldn't.
are the hardware stores just all closed? Is
Nothing,
that why?
nothing. There was
Wow,
nothing.
wow,
Hardware stores, everything closed. And then even with that situation, now they're starting to going to reopen. The majority of our business is still not online in South Africa. We only, I think, have two shops that actually do parts that you can order online. The rest of the guys are
really?
still hardcore, go in, buy off the counter and that type of stuff. And that's where I see this push is now coming from. I think all these guys are now sitting going, oh man, we've been thinking about it for so long, we should have done it. Now that push to
Right.
go e-commerce, the e-commerce route is now going to jump so quickly. Um,
Yeah, and that's going to happen. I mean, it's interesting. Even here, probably half our clients sold direct
mm,
over e-commerce before this thing, and the other half were scared. And I think for different reasons. Some were scared because they didn't want to offend their distributor customers. I think some were scared that, it might be too much for their internal team to handle. But the nice thing is that's gotten so much easier over the last couple of years. You have basic, website plugins like WooCommerce,
mm,
um, and Shopify, and there's a couple of other kind of branded products that you can just, you'll load your products in, and it does all the kind of shipping calculations and tax. And like out here, every state it's different tax, and in some cases, different counties have different tax.
mm.
All that's sort of baked into the code, so you just sort of plug it in and turn it on, and so they're making it a little bit easier. And I think, unfortunately, I mean, look, my first job in high school was working the counter at a speed shop, and that was one of the most fun jobs I ever had. But I just think that it's getting to the point where that, whether we like it or not, that may not necessarily be the way this thing works in the future.
Yeah, look, that's going to be the big question. The thing I found, so I mean, we've now obviously moved the magazine to an online thing, and I've gone and I've read everything, online business and this because I'm trying to get my head around it and see how I can help, the guys that we deal with and our clients to say, okay, well, this is a solution. And the issue I have is there's so much crap on the internet. There's so much bad information, you know. Everyone is trying to sell software or trying to do everything, and now especially we are just bombarded by quick fix type of things. Everyone is trying to sell someone some quick fix system to get online
Right.
and get everything going. So the point of getting proper information out, I think, is now crucial, especially also the fact that you go read everything. And I mean, we deal mainly we deal automotive, and that is it. But you can't go use B&B or travel systems and this type of stuff, because
No,
these things are not all generated towards the motoring industry, which is
no.
a monster on its own. No, it comes with its own challenges. I think that
Right.
that's with there's still information lacking in the market at the moment. You know,
Yeah, you're right. And it's interesting. I had a call about this earlier with the SEMA board. And the challenge with our industry is, about 10 years ago, we were working with a couple of major wheel companies as clients. And one of our wheel clients said, "Hey, we've got this dealer, and he's a good dealer. He does a lot of business for us. But it's just one guy with a couple of salespeople working out of this shop in somewhere in LA. And his website is from the early 90s and it's barely usable. And he wants to sell online. Can you help?" And we had done a bunch of website builds up to that point, but they were all like informational sites. They weren't selling car parts. And we thought, "Oh, okay, yeah, we can do that, no problem." And so we send the guy a proposal. He signs it. We start building out the site. Site looks beautiful. Do all the wireframes. It all looks good. Do all the design comps. Everything looks good. And then we go to start plugging in the data, and that's when things got sideways. And again, this is 10 years ago. And at the time, what we didn't understand is there's two types of data for our industry: application data and product data. And 10 years ago, there was no standard. So on the application side, you know, you can say, okay, I have a 67 Camaro. Well, all right. So good. That's a good thing. But if you're making parts for a 67 Camaro, chances are that part also probably fits a 68 Camaro. And it
mm,
also fits a 69 Camaro. Might also fit a 67, 68 Firebird. Might also fit a Trans Am. There are some things on there that might even fit like an A body or a B body. I don't know. GM was pretty good about that stuff. Ford wasn't. So that data didn't really exist, but there were ways at the time to sort of figure it out, the application side. The product side was a nightmare. So in this particular case, again, a decade ago, we went to the 4 or 5 different wheel companies, BBS and HRE and a couple of the other, Raceline and some of the other companies that he carried at the time, and said, "Hey, give us all your product data on all the products that this guy sells." And they said, "Okay." And each one of those companies sent us a spreadsheet. But he also sold suspension and brakes and tires. So then we went to Bilstein and H&R and Ibach and said, "Give me your product data." And they're like, "Okay." And all of a sudden we've got these spreadsheets, and HRE has this spreadsheet, and they measure back spacing in millimeters and this and that. They don't measure total diameter, they measure something else. And then BBS is doing it in the standard system, and literally everything is different. And we're like, I have no way to make all these things work together. So it was impossible. We worked on it for like a year and a half. We never got it done. It was probably the low point of my career just because we couldn't figure it out. And what SEMA did to their, and I think this is to the members' benefit of SEMA, is they created the SEMA Data Co-op. And I think there's some, a lot of people that like it. There's some people that have
obviously,
challenges with it, but one thing that this SDC did is they created a standardized thing where it's called ACEs and PIEs. ACEs is application, PIEs is product, and they said this is the standard the whole automotive aftermarket needs to use. Everybody use this standard, and that has been really helpful and was at least a good first step to tell the whole industry, here's how we're going to share product data. So if you sell on Amazon or Summit or Jegs, or you sell on some little local brick and mortar speed shop or whatever, everyone's going to take the same kind of data, and this is how you're going to measure it. And so that was really helpful. The challenge we see now, that especially for like, in your case, like if you've got some local shops and you want to buy parts from them and they're struggling to get online, and it's not a summit where they employ, dozens of coders that are sitting there just figuring this stuff out. The challenge is the manufacturers in some cases have really you've got, because the thing that I love about our industry is also the thing that's sort of a roadblock here, where you've got a lot of these family owned businesses where you got, the second or third generation running a speed parts company or a suspension company or whatever, and they've been doing it the same way for 40 or 50 years. And they've got some Excel spreadsheet that's all kind of tacked together with glue and scotch tape that they've been sort of using that as a way of tracking all their product data for 30, 40, 50 years. And you go to that company and say, I need you to totally change the way you track all of your product data. And then when you're done changing everything, you need to upload it into this cloud-based server that someone else controls. And then they're going to go transmit that to your customers. And we're an industry with a bunch of libertarians who don't like being told what to do, and everybody kind of freaked out. And they're like, I don't want to do that. But the problem is, you have to do that if you want to sell online.
Mm.
So that has been, I think, a challenge for our industry. To your point, versus like if you're in the clothing business, to the most part, a size large T-shirt is a size large T-shirt, and there's not a whole lot of variance there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that does need to sort of continue to evolve. But we're a lot further ahead of it than we were, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Look, and I mean that's just from a product perspective. Then you still have the big, enormous thing, which is social media, which is just, I
Mhm.
think, from going to go watch cat videos is fun, but when it comes to business, it just blows your mind completely. I mean, yesterday, well, you guys released that thing saying, yeah, now businesses need to look at what TikTok. Yeah, I'm sitting on the couch. Your mail comes in, and my 14-year-old stepdaughter is. I'm like, what the hell is TikTok? Now it's something else I need to get into. So
Sorry.
there's so much, and now you're trying to build this business, and now you have to think, oh well, now I have to build this, and I have to build the social base, and okay, now I have to gain clientele. So over and above of being, I think it's overwhelming a lot, because over and above building a product, building a company, you now need to become a social media expert and in 6 different applications, because you need to know how to post this thing to gain the most traction here, and this one to tie in with that one. And I think that's what's scaring people so much. I mean, it's just like you're going to have to start forgetting most of the things in your life, because there's so much data you have to consume in order to get all these things, especially if you're a very small business. Yeah. If you're a small shop or something trying to now get and gain into the market, it's not in the old days where you have a sign outside, you build a cool car, you go to a show, people like the car and they come back and they like you. Now it's all these millions of other things that's now come in, that's now playing this massive part in it. And that's where I'm picking up the guys are getting scared. It's like it's too much. I can't get into this. Why even bother?
Well, you're right, and at the same time, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity.
No, I agree.
Because you're right. When I started doing this, and for decades before I started doing it, most of the guys in our industry, whether there was Alex Exidius in the very early days of the SoCal Speed Shop to Boyd in the 80s and 90s, they all kind of did the same thing over a 30, 40-year span. They would basically, you know, like you said, build a car, go to the Grand National Roadster Show, build a car, go to the Autorama, build a car and, go to a couple of shows, get a couple of trophies, word of mouth travels. If you're a manufacturer, it would be, you'd call up Peterson Publishing and buy an ad in Hot Rod Magazine, and that was it. That was your marketing plan. You send Peterson a check every month, and your ad would run, and you'd sell parts. And it's certainly not that simple anymore. But there's I think also opportunity in it, because the challenge that the big manufacturers are facing is the same challenge that the little two-person shop is facing. They need content that they can post every day to connect in a meaningful way with an audience that will eventually feel like they're part of that brand, because they like to sort of take in their content and feel like they're part of the team, so they feel like they're in the shop. So like that story I told earlier, where I went by that shop that's not too far from my house just to kind of check in with those guys. It's a little shop called Powerhouse Performance, and they're small. They're only a couple of years old. He only has, I think, probably 5 or 6 employees. But what the owner Thomas figured out is he found a local college kid and he pays him to come in 20 or 30 hours a week. And this kid is not some pro photographer or anything, but he's just a talented kid who's taught himself how to shoot photos and how to shoot video. And honestly, about 75% of the stuff he's doing on his phone. He has a full SLR rig, but if you're shooting videos inside a shop, you don't need an SLR for that. You can use an
Sure.
iPhone for that. And what they've figured out, and a lot of shops have started to figure out here that I think is interesting, is first of all, Thomas is like the same age as me. He's not very good at social and doesn't want to be. So he's tapped this kid who he doesn't have to pay very much. And this kid just does all the stuff. And this kid is geeked out because he's getting paid to basically post videos on Instagram and Facebook and photo galleries of hot rods getting built. So he thinks this is a super cool job. I don't think he'll do it forever, but it's a good opportunity for him short term. But what they figured out is, so for example, like Magnaflow Exhaust is one of our clients, and we help them with social and PR and other stuff. Well, we've got to come up with stuff to post on their channel every day, and sometimes that's not that easy, especially right now when all the shows are canceled and all the events are canceled and all the stuff we normally go to get content aren't happening.
Yeah.
Well, if they're sitting there welding a new Magnaflow exhaust on a Z01 Camaro, and they shoot a really cool little video of that and they post it on their page and they tag Magnaflow, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab that video and I'm going to share it on the Magnaflow page. And even though Powerhouse might only have 10 or 15,000 fans, Magnaflow has 500,000. So now all of a sudden we're really happy at Magnaflow because we're getting content that's really authentic and really cool that we didn't have the ability to go get ourselves. They're really happy because we just told 500,000 people that their stuff is awesome.
Exactly.
And, I think that's where the shops have an opportunity is if they can sort of, and you don't have to do everything. I get that it's hard. You have to be an octopus if you want to be able to do all these different social channels at the same time and have newsletters and videos. I'm able to do that because I have a team of people that do it for a living. But if you're a shop owner, pick one or two things and do it really well. Don't do it half-assed. Don't post once a month on your Facebook page and then expect sales to come flooding in. But pick the one or two channels that you're really comfortable with. Like, I am not a TikTok guy. Abby on my team is like dancing around doing all this weird stuff and playing music and lip syncing. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? She's like, oh, it's for TikTok. And I'm like, all right. But you know what? It works. Like, it's working for the clients that are using it. It's working. I'm not lip singing to Billie Eilish on some TikTok video, but whatever. If she wants to do it, good. Knock yourself out. So I think, pick what you're comfortable with and crush it. But when you're doing it, do it in a way that makes your stuff shareable with other brands. And, it's really interesting because if you look at sort of the bigger shops, Roadster Shop, Ring Brothers, Speedcore, the shops that are a little more, they've been around a while, but that have started to kind of build out sponsorships and infrastructure. That's something that a lot of those guys have done a good job figuring out is when you're producing the content, don't just produce it to build your own brand. Make it shareable with the companies whose parts you like to use so that they use it too. And it becomes sort of a reciprocal relationship.
I love what you just said because that's the part I think guys keep missing. It's not just about building your own brand. It's tying into the guys that's around you. It's about building a community. So, this speed shop that uses this exhaust guy, and this is the tire guy, and this is everything. Start building your community and linking up with everybody. I think that's what the guys aren't understanding. That's how you build your base. Am I correct in saying that?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
All right.
And I think, and that's exactly it. Is I think that there are, you mentioned Holly, and I've known Bill Teichner, who runs their marketing program for, God, longer than I should admit, probably 20 something years. He's a talented guy and he's building out a good team. I mean, they own a lot of companies now and they have a lot of brands. So I think they're pretty nimble that they can go out and they can get a lot of content. And they got guys in California and Kentucky on the East Coast, and they run big events like LS Fest. So they have the ability to kind of get a lot of that stuff on their own. A lot of companies don't. And that's where I think having these kind of strategic partnerships, I mean, one of the things that we've even done, and I'll give you a tip on something that's worked really well for us, is we've created networks on Instagram of kind of group chats of different like-minded brands, some of which aren't even our clients, but brands that have similar customers, whether it's like hardcore trophy trucks or Jeep Space or Street Rods or whatever it is, and we'll promote each other's posts. So we'll drop a line of text in a group chat and say, hey, we just put up a post on this trans install with a clutch swap from Center Force, and if you guys can go in and comment on it and talk about it, it adds a lot of legitimacy, and your followers will probably see that. And then when you do the same thing with some suspension install for some suspension company, we'll do the same thing for you. And so even if it's not literally taking the content and sending it to a brand, which is also effective, sometimes it's just kind of creating lift. So that because, like, for example, on Instagram, if I like a page and that page comments on another page that I like, I see that first. So it's a nice brand reinforcement to see, oh, okay, like that guy liked that. That's cool. And then sometimes I'll go over to his page to see what he's doing. So, it really, it seems like there's all these sort of disparate things happening that you need to keep track of all at the same time. But the reality is they're all kind of interconnected. And the consumer is checking a lot of these same channels. There aren't very many, and we have actually market research on this. There's not a lot of consumers out there that are like only on Facebook or that are only on Instagram or they're definitely not only on TikTok, but you look at YouTube consumption, especially during the pandemic, has skyrocketed. Well, that guy's not only going on YouTube, he's going on other stuff too. So if you can give him a tease in one channel and say, hey, for more content, here's where you can go to see all of our stuff. And oh, by the way, if you go on our YouTube channel, we curated not only a bunch of our content that we shot, but we created a bunch of playlists. So if you're really into gassers, we did a couple videos on gassers that are really cool, but we also created a whole playlist of different videos about all the famous gassers and drag racing history, and you can watch all of them here. Most of them aren't even our videos. We have someone else's videos we just thought were cool. And what they'll usually will do is it'll incentivize them to subscribe to your channel and to follow your brand, and then you just legitimize yourself in that consumer's mind that, oh yeah, these guys are cool and they know what I want, so I'm going to follow them and make sure I keep interacting with their stuff.
Is it as common for something to go viral as it used to be, or is it now just funding? Have they set it up so you need to fund to get your information out there as much as possible?
I don't consider a paid post viral. I think that if you're paying to do it, it's not viral. Yeah, it's actually happening more now than ever before. At the onset of this whole thing years ago, it wasn't that common for a video to go viral or a post to go viral. It now happens almost every day. We just don't really pay attention to it. In the early days of this thing, if a video got 100,000 views, people would be like, whoa, that's crazy. Now it has to be a couple million before people have that same reaction. But it is so a perfect example. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a guy named Dave Portnoy who owns a sports kind of little empire with websites and social channels and stuff called Barstool Sports. And it's, normally it's him and his buddies talking about football or baseball or whatever. And he has kind of and I'm not a big stick and ball sports guy. I'm more, I'm a car guy, but I know who he is and I know who his channel is. He posted this rant on Instagram where he's literally just like you and I are right now. He's just looking at a camera in his like living room, just going off. And he goes completely off the handle about the quarantine and how they've now kind of in the city of LA, the mayor of LA basically said they're making the stay-at-home order indefinite until there's a cure, which is like, that could be a year. I don't know. So he just completely goes off the handle, is like shouting at the camera for 20 minutes. It is very watchable, by the way. It's, whether you agree with him or not, you can't stop watching it. And he posted on Instagram, and then I think reposted it on Twitter, and then someone else scraped it and I think maybe put it on YouTube. But just the Instagram version of it, it got to 1 million views in like 3 hours. And then it continued to go and go. And then the cable news stations picked it up. And now what they're doing is they're scraping it and putting it on their own channel. So it's continuing to go viral, but he's not getting the views from it. They are.
The views, yeah.
So that was yesterday that happened. So, it still is a thing, but it's just now it's not on one channel. We did something like that about a week and a half ago where one of our clients is Roof, the German Porsche. Well, they
Oh
don't really
yeah,
technically build Porsches
Yellow
anymore, but
Bird.
you know who they are.
Yeah,
Yeah, Yellowbird, exactly. So we were supposed to debut a new car for them at the Geneva show. Geneva got canceled. Then we said, okay, we'll debut it at Monterey Car Week. Monterey Car Week got canceled. In the meantime, for their 80th anniversary, we had already been working on some sort of like a mini documentary on the history of the brand and family owned business. It's actually a pretty cool story. They're really nice people, on top of the fact that they make badass cars. Um, so we thought, okay, if we have no idea if there's going to be events for the rest of the year, let's see if we can sort of get the spotlight they would have gotten through this car debut by pushing out this video as quickly as we can. So we wrapped up the video, and it had, some pretty famous Porsche guys in the video, and not like celebrities, but people in the Porsche world were pretty well known. And we got like the creator of Gran Turismo is in it. Oh, actually, he had one of his own video guys shoot the video in Japan because the very first version of Gran Turismo, they couldn't get the license from Porsche to put a
yeah.
Porsche in the
So they
game.
only had the yellow. I played
So
it
they
a
had the
while back.
Yellowbird.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we had some pretty cool people in the video. So we pushed it out, and the strategy we took was, instead of just dropping it on YouTube, we dropped it on YouTube. We dropped it on all the different social channels, Facebook and Instagram and TV as well. We also reached out to all of the we also reached out to all the people who were in the video and said, "Hey, if you want to post a link to our video, here's all the different places we put it. If you want to post it yourself, here's the Dropbox file, and you can post it on your own channel. We don't care as long as people watch it."
Mm.
And then we also sent out a press release to all the kind of sports car and supercar and men's lifestyle publications online mostly, and said, "Hey, we've got this video. Same thing. If you want to post a link to it on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, great. Here are the links. If you want to run it, let us know, and we'll send you the file, and you can put it on your own channel, because that is, they're monetized. So if they're getting views on their YouTube channel, especially the bigger guys like Top Gear or whatever, they're going to make money off that deal, which is fine, good. I want them to make money off it. I don't care. I just want eyeballs on the brand.
Yeah.
So at the end of the deal, that thing ended up getting about 1 million views in the first week, but it wasn't 1 million views on one YouTube video. It was 1 million views where there was 80,000 on our YouTube and another 100,000 on our Instagram. And Ted Gushu, who's a journalist and an influencer that runs Type 7. He got, I think, probably 60 or 70,000 views on his Instagram. And when you put it all together, we got the million eyeballs, but it was sort of fractionalized. And that's fine. We don't care. That's 1 million people that watch that video and were exposed to the brand, were exposed to the car, and we made that connection. The fact that they didn't necessarily do it through our channel,
Exactly.
whatever.
But that brings me to another part of where we're sitting. Social media, you've got two different channels at the moment. You've got the guys like yourself that you're there to get a brand out. And it's like you said, it's all about eyeballs. You want to try and get as much exposure. Then you've got the other side where it's monetizing, the brands, the guys that's trying to get stuff out to try and make money. Now, I saw a video the other day, and it's a bunch of guys that do, stupid online, crazy things, and their videos are getting millions of viewers and stuff. And they were talking about monetizing and how much money they were making off of these videos, and it wasn't a lot. It's
Right.
it's like surviving money. It's not living, but yeah, that's like surviving money. It's not like
Right.
living money,
Right. Right.
They were hitting like 1.2 to 2 million views, and they were making like $100, $200 off of everything because it's not set. There's not a set amount of money you get off of it.
Right.
There's
Right.
it's all based on different levels and all this type of stuff. And I think there's still this perception, and I've found it now more than anything else because we've got so many artists and guys and that's out there that now can't work, and they're all pointing towards YouTube, and they're all going, "Oh no, I'm trying to get things going on YouTube so I can monetize." And you kind of want to tell them that's as much as go. That's going to get harder over the next few
Right.
months because there's
Yep.
just so much. There's so much more
Right.
coming out, you know.
Right.
That's the other side.
I see what you're saying though.
Mm.
And it's funny. By the way, I might have to hit pause for a second and plug my iPad in. It's starting to
Scream at you.
tell me yeah. But I did a panel discussion a few years ago at the Peterson with kind of the state of automotive journalism, and most of the guys were like the editor of Cycle World and the editor of Hot Rod, and I think David Freiberger was there and stuff like that. But one of the guys, the most eye-opening comment that came out of that panel was Matt Farah, who is the host of the Smoking Tire, which is a podcast, and he was on a TV show for a minute, and he was also, I think a lot of people know him because he was part of the Drive channel on YouTube, which was pretty big for a while.
Yeah.
And Matt's comment was, he said when I started doing this, I was on TV. And he said, my revenue was pretty good because I was getting paid to host a TV show. And he said, so at the time, he said, my revenue was a fire hose, and it was just on, and there was just money coming out of it. Well, that ended, and it became pretty clear that wasn't going to come back. He said, so now he's got a pretty big YouTube channel. I mean, he's got several million subscribers. He said, now, in the beginning, YouTube, and I remember when this happened, they built a big studio in LA, and they called it like the YouTube Creator Studio or something like that. And they were paying people like Matt a lot of money to produce video because they were trying to onboard basically consumers into their platform. Well, that ended. And then it became a rev share thing. And exactly to your point, someone like Matt, who has a couple million subscribers and is getting pretty decent views on all of his videos, it's not a lot of money. It's a relatively small amount of money. So the way he described it is, he said, now instead of that fire hose that just spits money out, now I have 10 garden hoses, and each one is set on kind of trickle. So I've got a little bit of money coming in from my podcast because I've got a couple of advertisers. I have a little bit of money coming in from YouTube because of the rev share program. I've got a little bit of money coming in from my website because they sell some banner ads on there. I've got a little money coming in from this other thing, and so he's got all these different kind of things, and each one is sort of just dribbling it in a little bit. The bucket still fills up, but it's not filling up the way it did before. It's a lot of different sources. And I think, unfortunately, that is sort of the way things are right now. But I think that's changing because one of the things that's been really powerful for us is the rise and advent of influencer marketing. And that has become, that may not be the case necessarily for a shop, but for a manufacturer, that is a big deal.
This whole influencer thing, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Having an individual that, I understand, how can I put it? I understand it in a young market, if they call it the millennial sector. I understand that's all about the look at me and this is how cool my life is. And deep down, I'm actually a very sad person. But it's, it's only because I've got teenagers. So, but from a business perspective, how these people influence a brand, is that really working?
And that's what's so crazy is it's evolving quickly. I think, what you think of, I think what a lot of people think of when you hear influencers, you think of a Kardashian teenager.
Yeah, there we go.
Who's just some airhead who doesn't know anything, who flashes some fingernail polish and charges $50,000 for that. That is its own thing. That is outside my realm of expertise. Maybe that does work. I don't know. In fact, one of the Kardashians, I think one of the Jenners actually has a $1 billion valuation on a cosmetics line that the only promotion she does is through her own social channels. Good for her.
Yeah.
I can't quite figure out the math on that. But I can tell you that on our side of things, the influencers we work with are, I'll give you an example. We did an event about a year and a half ago for Nitto Tire, where Nitto launched a new tire that was really designed for kind of the modern muscle market. And Tomo Mizutani, who's the CEO of Nitto and Toyo, he came to this country from Japan and launched the Nitto brand with the 555, which was in the beginning, in the early 90s, really their big thing was this was a Mustang tire. And the Mustang community really embraced it. And that was when the 5.0 thing was huge. And So he has this real soft spot for Mustangs. He thinks Mustang guys are great because they helped build his career. So his idea that he came to the marketing team with was, let's do a big event with all sorts of Mustangs to launch this 555, the new version of the G2. So what we did is we rented a racetrack and we went out and we found a bunch of different. We found at least one example of every generation Mustang that was a really nice high end car. Restored, mostly pro touring cars that are kind of track ready, not race cars, but just high end street cars. And the photo op was great because we had everything from a first gen '64 Mustang to we even had like a pro touring Mustang 2, which I got to tell you, I don't know about South Africa, but out here it's pretty hard to find nice Mustang 2s. And Fox body and a SN95. We found all different cars, and we brought some normal kind of traditional journalists out. But we also went and brought in a bunch of influencers. And so, like, one of the influencers we brought out was a kid who has this very big, very active Instagram page that's devoted to nothing but Mustangs. And this kid showed up, and I think he was actually in his early 20s. He looked like he was 12. But we flew him out, got him a hotel room, brought him out to the track for a couple of days, got him seat time in some really bitchin' cars, let him drive a couple of really cool cars. We didn't pay him. We just gave him a really good experience. He had a blast. He posted like crazy about it on his channel, and he has like 2.5 million followers. And they're not following this kid. They don't even know who the person is behind the channel. They're following a Mustang page that they like. And all of a sudden, this Mustang page is posting all this Mustang content that's about Nitto tires, and it got a lot of attention. One of the other influencers we brought out is a guy we've actually become pretty good friends with, who runs sort of a men's lifestyle page on Instagram. Same thing, got about 1 million followers, and it's like a Maxim. He's guns, trucks, cars, a lot of muscle car stuff, girls in bikinis, nothing like too racy, but like a Maxim magazine is. The guy who runs it is a mailman. So like his day job is he's like a mailman. He's not like some social media guru, but when he's home at night and he's bored, he's just posting pictures of girls in bikinis and machine guns, and
he's doing what he was going to do it normally, didn't he?
Right, exactly. And he had a blast, and we let him drive a bunch of cool cars, and he posted a bunch of content, and we got a ton of eyeballs and sold a bunch of tires. So same deal, didn't pay him, just gave him a great experience. And that kind of thing can be super effective. So it's just sort of like it's finding that line where you're exposing your service, your shop, your brand, whatever, to the core audience that is your customer in an authentic way. You're doing it in a way like, yep, I know if these people follow this page and it's a huge Mustang page, the very least they know they're Mustang people. They're not some Prius driver. So it's like, okay, now, do I want to get a Kardashian to talk about tires? No, of course not. Do I want to pay? Like, there's definitely in our space, there's influencers that are like, oh, for $30,000, I'll plug your thing. No, I don't want anything to do with that because it's not authentic.
No,
and the audience knows that. Joe, hang on one second. I'm gonna plug you in, so I don't want to lose you here.
I understand this whole thing behind influences. But like you said, it comes down to, I think you're completely right where you say that. I think when people talk about influence, the first thing they think of Kardashians. They think about this one person that's very up on themselves, that walks into a restaurant, that demands, I give you my meal for free, or I tell people your food shits type of thing, which is bad stuff that we keep reading. But I think if you genuinely start looking at, like I said, guys to follow that has a say in the industry, or how can I put it? Yesterday, I interviewed Gus Johnson. He built that Hemi V-Dub, low on the ground.
Yeah,
he built that military truck as well. Just a cool guy. I mean, such a cool guy to talk to. And I mean, that bug that with the Hemi motor they built, that thing, he said, just went viral. He put that thing out and it just exploded all over the place. I mean, like 7 different videos have all had it on, guys, because I think he sold it. He sold it on now. And you look at someone like him, for instance, and you're like, that's a guy that you want a brand to follow.
Right.
He's unique. building style, the stuff that he gets into, that's the type of person. I think that's what the guys need to start looking at, is finding that person or those people that represents your brand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I think that it's funny. Chip Foose was doing that for 20 years, but it was just through TV. So we wouldn't call him a influencer, but he was an
Yeah,
influencer. And I
he
mean, I
was.
remember years ago, a friend told me, and this was, I think, the first time Overhauling was on back, was that 10, 12 years ago before they kind of brought it back. And a friend told me that Chip at the time, he had a 3M contract because he was huge in Brazil
I
because
heard about
they're,
that.
yeah, because they had the show was on reruns and they had dubbed it in Portuguese, and it was like one of the biggest shows in Brazil, and it was so popular that they called masking tape Foose tape because people were used to seeing Chip mask off cars on Overhauling.
Wow.
So I mean, and he's still paid by 3M as an ambassador today. So I think it's not a new model. I mean, in fact, I used to work at Rod and Custom Magazine in the beginning of my career, and it's funny because this was back when Peterson still owned it, and you could go into the basement of the Peterson building, and the archives were there. And I used to go down there just for fun to look through the archives and kind of check stuff out. And what was interesting is if you went into like the 50s section of the archive, the early days of Hot Rod, there would be story bags in there, and it would have the name of the photographer, and then most of the time it would be either slide film or later it'd be chromes, the or a Tri-X black and white strip film or whatever.
Yeah.
And like Eric Rickman was a big photographer for Hot Rod back in the day. So a lot of them would say Rickman on it or whatever. Well, some of the bags said Barris, and I always kind of wondered about that. And years later, when I met George Barris, I said, why are there story bags in the old Peterson archive with your name on? And he said, because back in the early 50s, my brother, who's Sam Barris, built like the Hirohata Merc and the, Sam Barris Merc, the pretty famous lead sleds. He said, my brother was the one doing most of the actual body work, and I was the promo guy. And what he would do is he had like a brownie camera, and he would take pictures and write a little article. Here's how to French headlights. Here's how to chop top. And he would send those articles to Bob Peterson for use in Hot Rod. And I'm not sure if he got paid or not for those articles, but his name was on it. So now George Barris is teaching you how to chop a top. Well, most guys don't want to do that. They're not going to get out a Sawzall and cut the roof off their car. So they would just take it to Barris's shop and have him do it. So nothing's new. They've been doing this for 70 years. Yeah. It's just the medium has changed. Instead of Hot Rod Magazine or Overhaul on TV, now it's Instagram.
Okay.
But,
it's like the issue we always had with the magazine. You have the shop that phones you, and it's like, oh man, you never want to put any of my cars in the magazine. And we're like, well, what cars do you have? Unless you tell us. We're not going to phone you every week and go, well, have you got something now? Have you got something now? Social media is the same. You can't complain unless you're the one that's actually putting everything out there, trying to get your name out as much as possible.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier, where it's not easy because there's so many channels, there's so many different things you have to do, but that is unfortunately sort of the reality of what you have to do now if you want to connect with people. You got to get the content out there.
I love what you said. Pick one. You don't have to have 1 million people on Facebook and 1 million people on Instagram and 1 million people here. Just find your channel, find your groove, and build your section from that side.
Yeah, exactly. We've been working with the Ring Brothers for a long time now. 7 or 8 years. Yeah, they're unbelievable. I mean, those guys, not only are they real artists in how they approach things, but they are the nicest people.
Really?
No ego, they're just super down to earth, family run business. The wives work in the shop too. They're all just really, really good people. But what's so funny is, Mike Ring, one of the two brothers, still has a flip phone. And, I think Jim finally did get some sort of smartphone, but they are not social media people, and that's okay. So, but they have a great sense of humor, and they're goofy, and they like to have a good time. And Jim really likes to do burnouts, all of which is good for social.
Exactly.
So that just means that, we have to go shoot it. and then we post it. And then when
Mm.
people have questions, we call them up and just say, "Here's the question," and they say, "Oh, here's what you do," and we write the answer, and it works fine. But it's kind of like we were talking about earlier. We with them, we really focused hard on Facebook for a long time, and we grew their Facebook page, and it did very well. And we finally did start an Instagram. And the thing about the Instagram is it's such a visual medium that we didn't have to do that much to get their first 100,000 followers. We just kept posting content. We had a huge backlog of photos of different car builds. Some of these car builds go back 20 years. But we just keep posting photos and
Yeah.
stuff. And occasionally when we get a video, we post it and people reacted and the page grew organically really fast. And so now we've got a couple channels going. We started a YouTube channel. And the reason we started a YouTube channel is because basically we've wanted to find ways where they're sponsored by some different companies. And one of their sponsors is 3M.
Yeah.
And 3M doesn't send them a check. They just sponsor them with product. So they send them, materials for building cars. And it was Mike and Jim's idea. They said, let's show people, because the thing is, it's so cool. Is there's a lot of car builders that are like, these are my secrets. I'll never show you how I do this thing. Again, these are such nice people. They're like, let's show people how we do things a little bit different.
Yeah.
And we produced a series of videos called Ring Brothers University, RBU, where it's like a 5-part video series where Mike actually goes step by step, and he gets like an old Impala Super Sport fender that's all messed up. And he starts off doing basic body work, and then he talks about how to prime and how to block and how to spray paint, and
Oh
how to
wow.
color sand and buff. And
Is that still live? Because I'd love to
yeah,
push that through my site. Hey.
I'll send you the links, and it's all there, and it racked up a couple 100,000 views. And we're not asking for anything. Just watch it, and hopefully you'll learn something. If you have questions, ask a question, we'll answer it. And it brought a lot of value to 3M because we're showing people how to use their product,
Mm.
but it also brought a lot of value to the Ring Brothers because people are watching it and going, "Oh wow, these guys really do know what they're doing." And I don't expect everyone who watches that video to call them up and order a 6-figure muscle car build,
Of course.
but hopefully they go, "Wow, those guys are really cool and they taught me something." And maybe when that guy who watched that video decides he wants to go build a Mustang, he buys a set of door hinges or
Yeah.
door handles or hood hinges or something from their bill of parts line.
There's just something about their builds every time. You know.
Yep, yep, they're just so unique. And wait till you see what they're bringing to SEMA this year. It's
Ah,
pretty awesome.
that's
It's really cool.
Is SEMA gonna? You think SEMA is gonna happen?
It's going to happen. So we just had a board meeting about it. Um, Barring the county government coming in or the state government coming in and shutting it down, which you never know
Yeah.
these days, could happen. But barring that from happening, it's going to happen. And SEMA has a really good track record of taking bold moves. So after 9/11, that was, it's obviously kind of mid-September. SEMA shows the end of October, and all air travel was shut down for a couple weeks. And SEMA was the first major trade show in America after 9/11. And I remember that show. And it was, admittedly, it was a little freaky, but it was still a good show. 08, 09, after the global,
Meltdown.
economic crisis. Yep, they had the show, and actually I thought the 08 and 09 shows were actually pretty good shows because you got rid of all the tire kickers, the guys that are there to have a, that they're there at a party. They're not there to actually kind of
Yeah.
do business, and so that was actually a pretty good show. And then it was just a few years ago, unfortunately, that shooter thing happened at that country concert in Vegas,
Yeah.
and that was, excuse me, please. Um, excuse me. That was right before the show. Thank you. That was like 2 weeks before the show. And we thought, Jesus, got a mass shooting in Vegas right before the show. But they had the show. They had new security measures. That's when they rolled out the metal detectors and all that. And so SEMA, I think what leadership has recognized that's a little different about SEMA than like the Consumer Electronics Show or Magic, which is like the trade show for the fashion industry. What's different about SEMA is it's almost entirely small businesses. The buyers are small businesses. The exhibitors, like 90% of them are small businesses. I mean, you look at the big Holly booth and the Edelbrock booth, but that's not the majority of the exhibitors that show.
I know. No.
The majority are little companies. And so we had this conversation. What the takeaway especially from staff, because they showed a lot of leadership on this, was basically, look, we would do more damage not having the show than we could do having the show. That's how they make their whole year, is orders they write at that show.
Yeah, but
So
I
the
think it's
idea
going to be
is,
crucial now. Sorry, for interrupting. I think it's going to be crucial for SEMA at a time like this to help guide, to
yep,
for instill faith, if I want to call it that way, that listen, the world's not coming to an end. We're moving forward. The manufacturing is still going to move forward. Building is still, new stuff is coming out. You can still go buy LS motor, and life is going to go on. I think that's why I'm hoping everything moves forward.
yep, agreed, totally.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I so far, unless something dramatic happens, we've met with the city. The staff has been meeting like regularly with the city, with the mayor, with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So unless, and also, I mean, it's a long way away at this point. We're talking about something that's 6 months off.
That's true.
So my hope is, I mean, I think where there's going to be a big impact is there'll be a big impact, honestly, Joe, with people like you. I think international travel is going to be a lot harder.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that are going, do I want to get on an airplane for 12 or 15 hours right now, 20 hours? And the answer for a lot of people might not be, especially a surprising number of exhibitors come from China.
Yeah. You guys had that crap a few years ago with guys that came to exhibit and they were knocking off guys at the shows. I mean, that was hectic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really have to compliment the SEMA staff. They've got a pretty dialed in response and stuff like that. So if you report that someone's in your booth with counterfeiting going on, they are aggressive about getting those guys out. And in one example, I think it might have been Omix Ada, one of the Jeep parts companies. There was some guy in there with calipers and a camera, and he's taking pictures of parts and stuff. And they reported it, and they sent the U.S. Marshals in. And the marshals, they escort those guys out of the show. So they don't mess around with that stuff. But so I think that international visitors will probably be down a little bit. But
I was talking to a guy the other day at Scabanti. He was actually set to race at Pikes Peak, South Africa. Porsche, US Porsche has actually invited him to drive one of their cars, and he was saying that that's his biggest issue. His biggest thing at the moment is he's not sure if he can travel to get there.
Right.
When will the travel ban be up? Yeah, I know.
Yes, I've got to jump off here, Joe.
No, but, I can see you busy, man. All right.
This has been great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too, man. We should do this again. You tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, I would love to.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, man.
Good talking to you.
Cheers. Bye.